Craig says he grew up in Duncan, Oklahoma, and in Tulsa, and he is a proud alum of Booker T. Washington High School. And one of the earliest classes after they integrated the schools, right? He received his undergraduate degree from Phillips University in Enid and a law degree from Washington University of Law in St. Louis. He is fortunate to have had two interesting careers. He practiced law with a private firm in Enid, and then as a trial and appellate attorney with the Office of the Federal Public Defender in Tulsa. A desire to experience firsthand other parts of the world led to his second career as a Foreign Service officer with the United States State Department. He served at U.S. missions in places I can't pronounce, in Cameroon, Ottawa, Canada, Jerusalem, Banyang Province, Afghanistan, Khartoum, Sudan, Singapore, and Suva, Fiji. So I got most of them. Just the first word. What was that first word? Starts with a Y. Yeah. That's it. He also had assignments at Maine State in Washington. After retiring from the State Department, his wife and he returned to Tulsa to be closer to family. He says he enjoys the volunteer work he does for the Tulsa County District Court's Early Settlement Program, Meals on Wheels, the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve, and Gilcrease Museum. And he's a member of the Tulsa Committee on Foreign Relations. Please join me in welcoming Craig Bryant and his wife Judith to Travels with Tulsans.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. And thank you, Tara, for your help. And thank you all for coming. Appreciate your patience. And so I guess this better be good, huh? So Marion introduced my wife, Judith, who traveled with me. We were a team at all of the posts that I served at abroad, with the exception of I was in Afghanistan, and she wasn't able to go there with me. I think she would have gone if they would have allowed that, but they wouldn't. Just wanted to ask, has anyone traveled to Singapore? If you could raise your, wow, quite a few actually. Okay. I'm Craig Bryant, and my wife and I were in Singapore from 2011 to 2014, 3 years. I was working for the State Department, a Foreign Service officer.
Wait, I'm not getting it to go. It's not moving forward. What's happening? Can I just do it here?
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Wake up.
All right.
I was assigned to the U.S. Embassy in Singapore. This is the embassy. And my duties there as a Foreign Service officer, I was the head of the consular section at the embassy, which the consular section had two main roles. First of all, I had a staff of about 15 people overall. About half were American, and then the other half were Singaporean. And we had two main responsibilities. One was to issue visas, either visas for travel or visas to immigrate to the U.S. We interviewed people and issued visas to them. And then the other responsibility that we had was to take care of the American citizens living in Singapore. At the time, there were about 30,000 Americans who resided in Singapore. And then, of course, there were a lot of tourists that came there. And so we would issue passports, and we would take care of Americans, any emergencies that they might encounter while they were there. The mission in Singapore, we had some VIPs visit while I was there. The U.S. mission in Singapore had about a total of over 100 Americans that worked there. In addition to the State Department, there were other agencies, the Department of Defense, Department of Commerce, the FAA, the FBI. The photo, we would all, each 4th of July, we would have a big event at the embassy. And so yeah, that's me about to get dunked. So the previous photo was one of the cakes that was decorated for the event. There was a kind of a custom that a lot of the bakeries in Singapore, as kind of a gift, would make these very elaborate cakes, and then we would serve those during our 4th of July reception. We would also have the Defense Department about once every year would have port visits from U.S. carriers, and they would come, and we would have an event on the carrier. So that's this photo is the carrier, the USS George Washington. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Singapore's background, its geography, the size, its history, people that live there, and the climate. And then I'm going to go on and talk about what makes, for me, made Singapore a very interesting place to live and also for people to visit. So the title was Singapore, the Little Red Dot. And what does that mean? Singapore is a very small country. It's located, you can see there, just at the very tip of the what's called the Malayan Peninsula. And one of the, this is kind of a nickname that it got from one of the other, the head of one of the other nations there in the region, that would say, if you looked at a map, you couldn't really see the island of Singapore because it was so small. All you could see was a little red dot. And so then that became one of the nicknames for Singapore. Singapore is a city-state. Its population is a little bit over 6 million people. It's in the U.S., it would be second in population, in population as a city, second in population to New York City. It is the most densely populated, or second most densely populated country in the world. Its area, about 284 square miles, and I looked this up, and that would make it roughly half the size of Tulsa County, just to put it in a perspective. So very densely populated country. It's located about 85 miles north of the equator. So that gives Singapore the climate, tropical, it's called a tropical rainforest climate. And I checked, today's temperature in Singapore was, the high was 88 degrees and the low was 77. And that's, the temperature year round is pretty consistent at just in that range. And then, and you all will appreciate that living in Oklahoma. I appreciate this. The humidity I looked up was 89%. And so, yeah, the climate, very hot, very humid, and there are no real seasons. It's very consistent year round. There is one monsoon season, and it's very rainy. And then there's one monsoon season where it's very, very rainy, and that runs roughly from August through November. Okay, maybe go back one. So who are the Singaporeans? So Singapore, the population is made up of diverse ethnic groups. The main ethnic groups, Chinese, Malay, Indian, and then diverse other people from other countries. There's a large expat population in Singapore, Europeans, Australians, people that come to work for large multinational corporations in the banking and finance sector. So, and this is a good photo. This is actually a photo of the staff of the consul section. I'm seated at the far end, but it gives you a good idea of the diversity of the population. Most of the people in the photo here are Singaporean.
Okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the important moments in Singapore's history. In its earliest days, Singapore was just a very small trading post and had a very small population. And then the British arrived in 1819, and they wanted to use the island as a port. And then Singapore became a British colony in 1824. And I might mention this is the Raffles Hotel, which was built by the British and named after a man named Stamford Raffles, who was the first British governor of Singapore. And just kind of an interesting side note. So there's a kind of a famous cocktail that's called the Singapore Sling. I don't know if anyone's ever tried that, but the story is the Singapore Sling was invented in the bar of the Raffles Hotel, and it's still served there. It's a very popular, I guess, particularly among the tourists. Everyone wants to sample a Singapore Sling. So the British arrived 1819. They used the Singapore as a port, and Singapore grew very rapidly with immigrants coming from China and from Malaya. And the British, while they were there, knew that the location of Singapore was a very strategic place for their defense. And they built a number of forts on the island that are still there. And these are some photos of the forts. And Singapore, over time, became a major British naval base. And then, back up. And then in World War II, the Japanese invaded Singapore in December 1941, shortly after Pearl Harbor. And Japan defeated the British and occupied Singapore for the duration of World War II. The British were able to evacuate most of their civilians, but about 85,000 British military personnel were captured and held in prison camps for the duration of the war. After World War II, Singapore returned to its status as a British colony, but the British began to wind down their influence over Singapore. And then in the early 1960s, Singapore joined in a federation with its neighbor, Malaya, which is now known as Malaysia, but previously known as Malaya. Then when they added Singapore, they added SIA to the end. So then that's why it's now known as Malaysia. But unfortunately, as things go, the federation between Singapore and Malaya didn't work out, Malaysia. And then Singapore no longer a British colony, and it became a fully independent nation in 1965. So it has been an independent nation for a little over 60 years now. And these are some photos that show what the what the old port of Singapore looked like, and then what it looks like now. It's a big shipping center. And after it became independent in 1965, Singapore, that began a very rapid period of economic growth. And Singapore entered a transition from third world status back in the 1950s, 1960s to becoming a very wealthy nation with a high standard of living. It's per capita, its gross domestic product (GDP) now is the fourth highest in the world, and it was known as one of the Asian tigers because of its fast-growing economy. This is the city center of Singapore as it looks now, with many skyscrapers and more being built all the time. So Singapore enjoys a very high quality of life. It's a democracy, places a high emphasis on education. It's been able to avoid civil unrest. In world rankings, it always ranks near the very top in the education level of its population. It's a transportation and shipping hub. This is the Changi Airport in Singapore, which is almost every year it is ranked as the very top airport in the world. It's kind of one of these places I can't really describe it. It's something you really have to kind of experience for yourself. It's got it has a lot of dining options, including some American options, and it's got just a big mall. It's got indoor gardens. It has a waterfall. So it's the airport itself is something to experience. So what is it like to live in Singapore? What is it that makes Singapore a distinctive city? And I would, just to start off with, it's a multicultural city, and I mentioned the different ethnic groups: the Chinese, Malay, Indian, Tamil, and it's got different religions. It has 4 official languages. Let's stop here.
Okay.
It's got 4 official languages: Mandarin Chinese, Malay, Tamil, English. But in the schools and in business, English is considered the first language or primary language. So everyone learns English in schools in Singapore. And it has another unofficial language that is referred to as Singlish, which is just kind of a strange mashup of English with a number of other languages. And after you're there for a while, you pick up on some terms in Singlish. There's a diversity in its religions. We have some photos of some of the different celebrations.
These are all from Little India.
Okay. This is Little India neighborhood in Singapore. These are temples in Little India. This is a Hindi ceremony which we saw, where it's kind of a parade, but they have people, and they have these, as you can see, they're actually pierced, and
Some things are attached to
They're attached to their skin. Ouch.
And so we went down and watched this one year.
So does he go around those things on all his life?
No.
No,
It's, it's kind of a little parade or ceremony where they walk down a street. But yeah, it's to show their devotion. Also in Little India, and there's also a Chinatown, and these are some photos of. This is the start of the Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year, which is about a month-long celebration, where the streets in the Chinatown area they're lit up with like literally hundreds of these lanterns that stretch on for blocks. I'll go back. And so I believe this was the year of the snake.
Right.
And this is a photo slide that I thought depicted how old Chinatown, what the old storefronts look like. And then in the distance at the end of the block, this is a modern apartment tower. They have very tall, large apartment towers.
We could go on the top of that one too.
Also, go back. Also, back to this is also in Chinatown. That was also in Chinatown. A person making noodles from scratch.
You have to talk about Hong Kong. It's like
this is a place. It's a little hard to explain just from the photo, but it was Malay, and it's like a park, but it's set up to show the different circles of hell, and if you don't live a virtuous life, it functions as kind of a warning to people. It's more of just like a tourist site now. But if you don't live a virtuous life, it's like a warning about what's going to happen to you in the afterlife. Again, this is part of the Malay culture. This is a Peranakan museum. This is the Arab street for Muslim neighborhood. Another distinction or a big, I think something that people visiting or living in Singapore really enjoy is the highly developed public transportation. We didn't have a car during the time we lived there. And we relied on buses and also on the metro, the MRT. And I know that Judy traveled all over Singapore just using the bus. It was very, very easy to use, very clean and timely in its operation. These were at any of the metro or bus stops. Singapore, the government of Singapore would put up these public service ads just to try to remind people about. Singapore has a very low crime rate, but they would always say that low crime didn't mean no crime. Let's go more. Mm-hmm. Yes. No, I believe that's actually, I think it's a polo field. No, I take it. It's a cricket field, a cricket pitch. Okay, go ahead. And then this shows the government sponsored housing in Singapore, which again, you can see that the height of the buildings, how tall they are, and they're spread out all over the island. But the people live here. They don't have cars, and so they rely on the public transportation. And then this is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. So Singapore also has some very wealthy people living there, and very high-end apartment and condo buildings. And this was an actual thing, because I remember they would have advertisements for this, that because there wasn't a lot of room for parking lots. So you could they had special elevators set up for cars, and you could pull your car in the elevator, and it would take your car up to your condo. So right, and I think, you know, if you made enough money to, you had to be pretty wealthy to own a car in Singapore. And so I guess part of that thing is that, well, you know, if I'm going to spend all this money for a car, I'd like to be able to sit there in my living room and admire it. This is another distinctive feature of Singapore, is it has these, had many of these that were called hawker centers. And what is a hawker center? A hawker center is basically a food hall. Really, the closest thing we have here to compare to a hawker center is the Mother Road Market, but much bigger than the Mother Road Market. And this shows the inside of one of the hawker centers. So these are very small so you'd have a food hall, and then you'd have all these different vendors there, and they worked in just very small spaces, and they would specialize like in one kind of dish or meal, and so you could just these corridors, you could just walk up and down and just kind of pick what you wanted. But there was just such a wide variety of different cuisine there. They were very cheap. You could get a good meal for, like, say, $5 or less than that. And they were very clean. Like, they would post these notices in their stalls about their latest grade on a hygiene test. But the hawker centers, and it was just a great place to go and to observe or participate in local culture, because everyone went there. The food was cheap. There, you know, you would have debates with people that you knew about what was the best thing to get at a particular hawker center. And then people, after they had their meal, would just kind of hang out and relax at the hawker center. This is a kind of an odd fruit that is kind of infamous in Singapore. It's called durian, and I have to admit, and I'm sorry for this, but I never did actually try it. And I wish that I had. But durian, what it was known for is that it smells so bad. And did you ever try it, or? But you did.
Mustard, and it smells like sticky.
Yeah. So
like stinky tofu or something.
Well,
It's like a.
yeah, people would describe what it smelled like. I used to hear that it smelled like really stinky, like gym clothes. So that's durian. Um, and they have modern supermarkets in Singapore, but I know Judy liked to go to these we're called wet markets, and these are like where you would go to get the very freshest food, including seafood. But then you would go like to a mall in Singapore, and it was you would think you would get away from this while you're overseas, but no, they had a lot of American fast food there. Like they had KFC, they had Pizza Hut, they had Wendy's. So yeah, I just never quite understood why people would want to go there when they had all these other options. This is another big part of Singapore's culture is shopping and shopping malls. This is the main shopping destination for luxury high-end shopping. It's called Orchard Road. And as you can see, you can go there for things from Tiffany, Cartier, Louis Vuitton, all these luxury brands. And shopping centers are built on several levels, including underground. And you could walk, you could go underground, and then they'd have tunnels that would connect the different malls. And a lot of that is just due to people, once they went in a mall, they didn't want to go back outside because it was so hot and humid or rainy. So you go to a mall and you could just go from one mall to the other without having to go outside. This is Singapore also has a number of high-end hotels, and this is one that was opened in 2011. It's called the Marina Bay Sands, and it's become since it was open, it's become really a very prominent landmark for a symbol of Singapore. Each of the three towers, and this is all part of one hotel, each of the three towers is 57 stories high. And then the photo on the right, you can see is one of these is what's on the very top of the towers. It's a huge swimming pool that extends. I think they call it an infinity pool. But it's a great place. We went up there several times, just not to swim, but just to enjoy the view from the top. This is an older hotel, the Fullerton Hotel, that was built by the British. All right, let's stop here. One of the things that, well, again, another thing that to me distinguishes Singapore and maybe the most distinctive feature of Singapore as a city and as a nation and as a people is its emphasis on the natural environment. And just a little background on that. After Singapore became independent in 1965, its founding prime minister, Lee Kuan Yew, he was like the George Washington of Singapore. He was prime minister for a long time. But he promoted the idea of what they called, it had originally been known as the Garden City. And then they changed it a little bit to the city in a garden. And he wanted to offset the harshness of the urban environment where you had such a dense population. And you have a lot of concrete and steel and roadways and these high housing towers. And he wanted to offset that. And his idea was instead of having gardens in a city, that Singapore would exist as a city within a garden. And the photo here is one example of that. And that this is a bridge over one of the highways. And so all of these bridges you would see would have different plants or greenery that would hang off the bridge. And then also, if you were driving down the road, the medians and the highways would all be planted. They would have flowers, and so you would see that everywhere. And in that, I guess that's one good thing about the climate. It was pretty easy to get things. You'd have so much rain, and it'd be easy to grow things. This was actually open, and this is another feature of the city in a garden. This was actually open during the time when we were there, and it's called Gardens by the Bay, and it has several parts to it that you can see over on the left. These are very large enclosed gardens that are in.
That's inside.
This is inside, and you can see the people down on the right. But they're just full, and so yeah, you can walk around and see all different kinds of plants and flowers. And then this is another feature of the Gardens by the Bay, and these were called sky trees, and you could go up and up inside of those and go up to the top. I don't know that you could do it at all, but I know you could at this particular one. And again, this is part of the Gardens by the Bay. And that's Judy on the left.
That's because my maiden name was Henderson, and I was waving for Henderson Waves.
It was named after one of her relatives. Anyway, and this is part of the park system. Is that the parks and nature reserves were connected, and that's me. We're connected by all these different kinds of walkways. Like the previous one was called Henderson Waves, and then this one was just an elevated walkway. So as of now, 10% of Singapore's land area is set aside for parks and nature reserves, and I think they want to increase it from that. This is Singapore's Botanic Garden, which is a garden that was originally designed and started when it was a British colony. It is one of the nicest, if not the nicest, botanic gardens that I've ever been in.
That's the last slide.
So, and Singapore is now considered one of the greenest cities in the world. And they're very conscientious about having a green city, trying to limit pollution. There's a very strict limit on the number of private cars in Singapore, and an emphasis on public transportation. And I should mention also, as part of the Botanic Garden, they have a national orchid garden, and orchids are, you see those everywhere in Singapore, and very, very popular. So that I would be happy to answer any questions you all have or about Singapore. There is most of the population is concentrated in the southern part of Singapore, but there are areas I'm thinking about this. It's called a bird park that we went to, and it's not. It was a park. It was set aside as a like a nature reserve. But we went there, and I remember that it was really nice because you didn't hear any traffic. There were very few people there. This was the place I believe that we'd be walking along the path, and you'd come around a corner, and there'd be some kind of like big lizard that was like walking down the path in front of you. But yeah, there are a few just open spaces like that. We lived in Singapore, and we anytime we were overseas, I always asked that they arranged our housing, the State Department. I always asked to be in a place close enough where I could walk to work, and so we were roughly a mile away from the embassy, and it was a nice place. It was a condo. It wasn't a high rise. It was what, 2 or 3?
No, it was about 4 stories tall. And we were like on the second floor. Beautiful gardens around us. Very nice, yeah.
But the public school, very little crime, very well controlled.
They have, they have some pretty strict social controls. Like one thing that seems a little strange is that they have a law that where you're not supposed to import or sell chewing gum, and it's not against the law to actually to have chewing gum or to chew it, but you're not supposed to sell it. And so, and that's one example. They have very strict laws on drug trafficking. Drug trafficking is a capital offense, and they have a lot of caution about that when you enter Singapore, about if you're caught selling drugs, this is a capital offense, and they mean that. And then the other custom that they have is for certain crimes, the punishment is something that's called caning, and what that is, and it literally is that they have you go to jail or prison, and there's a guy there that and the judge will sentence you to a certain number of, they call it strokes of the cane, and it's exactly what that sounds like. The guy has like a heavy wooden cane, and okay, I'm getting too far away. Sorry. And the person bends over, and you get so many strokes with the cane, and there's a number of about 20 or 30 crimes in Singapore where that is an option for a judge to impose as a sentence. So when Singapore first became an independent nation, the prime minister, he was concerned about, he had this vision for Singapore, and he said that it was easy to change or modernize the infrastructure of a country, but what was difficult was that it was difficult to change people's social and cultural practices. And he had been to some other Southeast Asian countries that were dirty and had a lot of crime, and he didn't want that for Singapore. So yeah, very low crime rate there, which pretty harsh in some of their punishments.
What about healthcare?
It's very good, and it's easily acceptable or accessible to for the citizens of Singapore. Hospitals are modern. They have public health care. It's not based on insurance.
Free through university level?
Yes, it is free, and their education system always very highly ranked. Big emphasis on the STEM subjects, and they have a couple of their universities are ranked in the top 20 in the world. Yes.
How has Singapore become so wealthy? What is the main source of money?
Really, I would say it was very lucky in its location, and so that was kind of how its wealth started. They built this large port, and so it became just a shipping terminal, and then they built this airport, which is very busy, and then their government is very pro-business, and in areas where people make a lot of money through finance, and they have banks. Really every large bank that you could think of has an office there, and now they're also very getting into the tech and so their business sector is oriented towards areas that make a lot of money. Yes.
Are there still people that do like little boats? Is there a harbor?
You can still see some little boats along the river. I think we had one slide that showed that, but I don't believe that there are people that actually live there. It is fun to walk along the river because they still have some of the old boats, ships. Is there somebody? Anyone else? Oh, yes. Yeah, I thought there was another question. But
It's because of the metro system.
There's kind of an odd or funny story about that. That people, I guess, after they first started building their metro system, that people would do things with take their gum out, and they would stick it on the sensors or the sliding doors or the turnstiles, and it would mess that up. And they're really proud of their metro system, and it's and they really, Judy will tell you this, they really prioritize having a very efficient metro system on time that people can rely upon. And so, apparently that was what caused this prohibition on chewing gum. And then plus it's just, I think also just a cleanliness issue. I would say it's the cleanest city that I've ever visited or lived
I
in.
compared it to living in Disney World because everything functioned properly. It was clean. There was lots of things to do. And the bus system, I went everywhere on that island on the bus, and they had this app that would just, you could put in where you wanted to go and it would tell you what time. The bus was always on time. You never waited. Even if it was pouring rain, it was still there. It was a great way to get everywhere on the island. Even if we went, there were some places you could go and take a little boat to another little island. All of that we accomplished just on the buses. So it was really.
Was the transportation highly subsidized, so it wasn't expensive for you?
No, it wasn't expensive. You could
So they
buy,
might
you
have
bought a
said-
little card and it was fairly cheap because there's
Yeah.
so many people that are working class, because most of those big high rises are for small, very small apartments for people.
I should, yeah, and just to say about the apartments that they're really small, but that's part of the government would provide people with housing based upon how much they could afford to pay. No,
No, it's not homeless.
I don't recall ever seeing
Every
A
one of the
homeless person.
high-rise buildings had a place to eat on the bottom, like a little hawker center at the bottom, so they didn't have to go very far, and there was always a park nearby. So it's geared towards small villages inside the big city. It's very nice.
But yeah, and I think that's also one of the reasons why they put this emphasis on having these parks and green areas, is because people that were living in these high rises in these small apartments, they could go down to the hawker center, get a cheap meal, kind of hang out there, go to a park. Yes, I appreciate all the questions.
Stories, high rise.
Yeah, I was going to say they have on most of these high rises, they have what they call green roofs, where they've got gardens on top of the roof. And they have a goal, I forget the year, but it may be it's 2030 or so, where they want to have I believe they call it a net carbon footprint. That's which is a pretty ambitious goal. I don't, but they have the if they've identified that as a goal, their government is very dedicated to meeting those kind of goals. Yes. Oh, shoot.
Yes, she was in Papua New Guinea, and they would send her to Singapore.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. That and yeah, and that was true for a lot of the embassies in that region because the medical care was so good that they would send them to Singapore. Yes.
What about animals, little pets? Is it allowed or are they?
Yeah, like where we lived, a lot of people had dogs. Yeah, we were expected to clean up after them.
Where is that?
Oh, yes.
I was curious about water supply being such a small area. Is it mostly rainwater catchment or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they have no shortage of rain.
So there's not that like reservoirs or.
No, there are some reservoirs where they collect water.
Seems like such a small area for it to be a whole country.
Yeah. they call it the term for it is it's called a city state.
Does Singaporean society have any difficulty obtaining a knowledgeable and effective labor force, or is there immigration away from Singapore to seek jobs?
I don't think they have any problem with that. As far as people, I mean, they have a lot of people that will migrate, like a number of people will come to the U.S., but they may migrate, like come here to the U.S., work for a while, and then go back to Singapore. Because I was going to say that's another thing about the societies. They're very family oriented. But one of the problems that they have right now that they're facing, which is true of a lot of countries, developed countries, is that their birth rate has become so low, and I think right now it's like fallen below what the replacement level for the population would be, and so I'm sure they're really concerned about that.